Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be part of our next session in which we're bringing together 4 transformational leaders to discuss how they've evolved their VoC strategies in the face of the past 12 months. This year has really been about leaning in to drive customer closeness, empathy, and trust. And so I'm really excited to learn more about how our panelists are adapting their VoC programs to keep their organizations closer than ever to customers. So we'll start with a quick round of intros and then we'll get into it. My name's Jenna Dorman. I currently lead our strategic enterprise business at Alida, really supporting our partnerships with our largest technology and media customers. And Allison, we'll kick it over to you to start.
Okay, thank you. I'm Allison Lichmeyer. I lead customer feedback programs for Adobe's Digital Experience Business Unit. Those basically take in all pre-release programs such as Customer Advisory Board, Executive Advisory Board, Alpha Beta program, user labs, and really trying to get the voice of the customer before we go to market.
And Nikia, did you want to jump in next?
Hi everyone, happy to be here. My name is Nikia Raviak. Pronouns are she and her, and I am the head of research at Twitter.
Great. Christy?
Hi everyone, my name is Christy McAllister. I lead the customer research team at Autodesk for their digital platform and experience group.
And the last one, last but not least, I'm Eva. I'm based actually in London, but I work for HBO Max, looking after several initiatives that have international slant, but one area that I'm really focused on at the moment and really passionate is around creating the Max community with Alida. So at the moment, that's what we are focused on.
Great, thanks, Eva. So thanks, ladies. It's so great to have such a breadth of perspective today across both B2C and B2B focused tech brands and media brands. And so we're really looking forward to exploring your perspective in a few key areas. I wanted to start with a topic that is close to home for me, and that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think now more than ever, brands must ensure their products and their services foster safety and belonging for all communities and really ultimately reflect the diversity of those they serve. This has sparked a big focus on DE&I, specifically in customer innovation and also data collection. So I'm curious how your organizations are thinking about and taking on this challenge. Nikia, I know Twitter is doing some really groundbreaking work in this area, so why don't we kick things off with you?
Thank you, Jenna. Yeah, I think that I'll start off by saying that there is a lot of conversation around how to do this well. And as you can imagine, there is thought going into everything from who we go after when we do research to how we recruit, to how we retain people who work at the company. So it's a very all-encompassing and comprehensive approach to diversity and inclusion that starts from making sure that the people who are in the building represent the people who we serve. So I wanted to just sort of start off with that it's not just the research side of things and ensuring that we're getting this breadth and depth of customer insight, but we are doing what we need to do to ensure that people who are building understand that it's important that the teams reflect that. So I'll start there. So a couple of things that we've done just to share, at least on the research side, is to ensure that we are including not just diverse participants from an ethnicity and a gender perspective, but we really pushed in 2 ways. We've expanded the topic to just be around marginalized communities. So anybody who feels kind of on the margins, and that includes people who are deaf and hard of hearing. Oftentimes this conversation around diversity and inclusion ends at the sort of stuff that you can see. But I think in the last 7 months or so, we've really tried to ensure that when we think about stimuli, when we think about the way that we do research, even the way that we launch products, we want to make sure that we're capturing people who are deaf and hard of hearing, people who are blind or have sight impediments, and everything within that accessibility space. And I think the last thing that I'll talk about that we're doing right now, which is where this partnership comes up, is building communities that have marginalized people in it, so that we ensure that in addition to the research that we do, we can tap into this community anytime and just ask, like, how are we doing? does this service, the solution, this feature work for you? And doing that as early and often as possible, so that by the time we're getting to the last few days and weeks before launch, we've really pushed out on that perspective. So it's been exciting, and I've actually learned a tremendous amount because, you know, we're all kind of being educated in this space for sure.
Great, thanks, Nakia. I think we can probably all take some inspiration in learning more about really how Twitter is shaping thought leadership in this space. So appreciate your thoughts there. Eva, I know HBO Max has also been tackling how to really look at underserved communities and ensure that they are represented in your insights and data collection. So can you give us a little bit of background on how HBO is thinking about things internally?
Sure. I think basically to reflect to what Nakia was saying, you know, we are looking at it as kind of underserved communities because there are so many different angles that you know you can approach this. We definitely heard loud and clear from many different parts of the business the interest and desire to really understand the needs and perception and the representation of the underserved communities. And we have done research to kind of across different business areas to feed into. So for example, content, to understand, you know, that we are creating relevant content from the marketing point of view, how we market that content, from the product development, you know, all these different areas, and all the business is really keen to understand that jointly. So we've done a couple of series of projects to understand exactly that with Latinx, with LGBTQ, and with Black communities as well. And what was really interesting, that consumers told us across the broad entertainment ecosystem that we need to think about end-to-end production process. So for example, with more people of color to produce and write for content to feel really authentic, from LGBTQ to showcase the nuanced elements, you know, they're not just a single note, that we need to look a little bit broader. So we really pushed the information to the business, and also there is a desire to repeat those pieces of work. So we are just now doing a second wave of the research, actually utilizing the panel to kind of understand the progress, what we implemented, how that works, and how we can do better.
Great. Thanks, Eva. And then finally, Christy, I think, you know, more specifically in the B2B space, I think there's been sometimes a different approach thinking about DE&I. And I know you've been doing some great work with Autodesk around sort of maybe shifting the status quo and thinking about that. So can you elaborate on that a little bit for the audience?
Definitely, Jenna. So, you know, Autodesk, we make professional software. So there tends to be, I think, in the sort of research industry, this assumption that when recruiting in the professional space or in the B2B space, that you sort of take this kind of color or gender blind or sort of demographically blind approach when it comes to those sort of attributes. And we, you know, there's this tendency to look at, you know, company and role and other sort of business or market attributes as sort of a key defining factor for recruitment. And, you know, as this year has progressed, I feel like, you know, I've been sort of thinking about how might we maybe push on that assumption and sort of question that a little bit, in that, you know, I think they're in having this sort of, you know, colorblind approach. For example, we may be unintentionally excluding very sort of important but underrepresented markets within the professional space. And I think that's something that we're really looking to realign on and really kind of push on a bit more. So it's something that is near and dear to my heart. I'm very proud of the work that Autodesk has been investing and doing internally in building more diversity and equitable hiring and inclusion and belonging. But I think it's time for us to really make sure that we're taking that lens externally in our recruitment practices as well.
Great, thanks, Christy. So now let's move on to more of a discussion around some of the challenges that we are all facing around generally moving with the agility to inform customer-centric decisions. According to McKinsey Global Survey of Executives, companies have accelerated the digitization of products in their portfolios by 7 years in the past year alone. So due to the pace in which trends are shifting, and businesses are arguably less certain about customer preferences than ever before. How are your teams addressing the challenge of staying close to customers in the face of the rapidly changing expectations and preferences and sort of the pace at which you're required to move to capture those? Allison, I know you specifically, your team has done some really great work around trying to shift from more of an engineering to a customer-led culture. So why don't you kick this one off?
Yeah, you bet. So thanks. Yeah, with our business unit is made up of several acquisitions. So we're constantly trying to pull that voice of the customer together. We're working on strategy right now, how we're going to do that, because on a daily basis, our entire company is working with customers and talking to customers and hearing from them. We don't have a centralized way to pull all that feedback together. So one way we started with is this last year, we rolled out our feedback panel using Alita, and that was to help accelerate decision-making by having a really big pool of customers who have opted into the feedback opportunities. What this led to is our contract negotiation went down to like 1%. That was massive for us. It was a massive win for our legal department as well. And it also was able to actively recruit we're able to actively recruit customers within 2 weeks versus 5 weeks plus, because in order for them to participate in our pre-release activities, we had to have an NDA in place. So that was a great benefit. It helps us get closer to our customers a lot quicker. It also helps our product department make decisions quicker, right? So there were some instances where we're able to get our activities, and when I say activities, I mean our beta test programs, our alphas, our user labs, usability tests, etc. Those activities were able to be filled within 24 hours at times, which was huge, right? When you need feedback quick, that was a great one. It also led to us being able to get, I think we have 67 feedback activities with nearly 700 customers just this year alone, which means the breadth is a lot bigger and we can make those insight-driven decisions a lot more confidently. Another way that we're staying close is through our Experience League. It's our digital experience community and learning platform where our customers come to learn from one another as well as from Adobe experts. We've seen engagement go up by 134% this past year. That was a big indication of the importance of technology in this COVID time. And also it was exciting to see our customers willing to share their experience with others as well as with Adobe. So technology in general has helped us stay close to our customers this past year, obviously. We've been able to increase metrics surprisingly and talk to more people versus when we've done them in the past. Although I don't want to discount the in-person events, obviously, because those are still massive and very important, but we can definitely hear from more customers in a shorter amount of time this past year with all the digital world we're living in.
Great, thanks, Allison. Eva, I know the media space has had to move very rapidly in the face of a lot of disruption this year and things changing and really everything moving online and digitization strategies rapidly evolving. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've been tackling some of these trends?
Sure. I think we are all kind of aware of the paradox of choice that over the last 5 or so years, we've been faced with all the options that we're given with SWOT services and kind of how that brings the choice fatigue. And, this isn't a new topic, but it really was accelerated during COVID because not only several new platforms have launched, HBO Max including, but home entertainment has really become such a valuable escapism during this period. So we really wanted to understand, and I think this will be an ongoing thing that we need to explore and understand around how people choose what to watch. And we particularly honed down into understanding passive versus active viewing, because basically we wanted to understand there is this paradox of choice. People want the choice, but sometimes they actually don't want the choice. They just want to lean back and experience the viewing. And I think the research really reframed the thinking, because we assumed in the linear viewing, passive viewing means passive choice. You just switch it on and you just watch whatever is there. But we really understood from the research that in SWOT environment, passive choice is very different. Passive viewing, you're still very active in what you are choosing. You're just maybe not as engaged when you're watching. And we looked a little bit deeper what background watching is, and it showed that we really are watching in a background for two reasons in SWOT. One is to have a companion. So basically it's a reassurance, there's a noise in the house, there is something going on, and maybe you're getting ready for bed, or maybe you are just preparing cooking and things like that. But still you want a conscious choice. You still want to kind of be engaged in what you're viewing. The other one is compromise watching. Especially now in a COVID time, we are kind of sitting together with the family, and there's always this kind of argument where we're going to watch so everyone is pleased, but ultimately no one is really fully pleased. There is a compromise, and in that sense, no one is 100% happy, but there's still a choice. We still chose something that will make all of us semi-engaged at least. So I think this piece of work really helped us reframe and understand the problem a little bit deeper. But I think this question around the paradox of choice and choice fatigue will be endless thing that all of the SWOT services will have to work and get better at resolving. We are seeing lots of creative and brilliant ideas coming up. But it does require a lot of work and learning behind to, progress little by little.
It's fascinating. I think entertainment's taking a different role every day in our lives. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then finally, Christy, I think from your perspective, I know specifically when you're dealing with harder to reach sort of professional audiences, the time to access those audiences is always a bit challenging. How has your team been able to kind of maintain a pulse throughout the past 12 months as everything's gone to more of a digital approach and environment?
Yeah, it's something that we've been definitely feeling, and it's something that I'm, trying to resolve and think about every day. And right now, because I just came from a meeting where we're talking about this very problem. Our teams, despite having such a challenging year and everyone working remotely, we haven't changed any of our launch deadlines or dates at all. In fact, if anything, we've accelerated a lot of them. So what that's meant is it's been increasingly challenging for research to really meet those needs. All the teams are very resource stretched. A lot of different types of research doesn't really lend itself that well to the sort of ever increasing velocity of these design iterations and cycles. So what we've done, we've been forced to think of creative ways in which we can still inform and inject that customer voice and data in these cycles. And on top of that, a lot of the work that we're doing is really focused on very hard to reach, very busy professional individuals that oversee the purchase of our software, the management of our software. They're being stretched, and they're kind of going through their own fatigue as well, and they have less and less time to really spend with us to give us that really valuable feedback. So we're doing a few things. We're really leveraging the existing work that we have, partnering with other data sources to really surface things in a more smart and efficient way. I'm really happy to say that we're really leveraging Alida as a platform to really help us stay in touch with those highly engaged, harder to find customers. And we're really exploring panel functionality where instead of having to spin up multiple research streams to match these kind of ever increasing sprints, that we can start to explore creating panels of very specific persona types and being able to regularly check in with them at a regular cadence. It gives them the flexibility to kind of come in and out and have their voice heard. It gives our teams that relief and that sort of release and centralizing that customer voice in a way that works a little bit better with the cadence that we're seeing. So those are some ways that we're exploring and trying to address this problem that I think a lot of people are finding.
Great, thanks, Christy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think finally, the area that I think I wanted to explore today is just generally, trends in research have changed a lot over the past 12 months. Access to traditional customer advisory boards, any sort of in-lab testing really disappeared virtually overnight. And I think we've all seen both benefits and we've also seen challenges to some of those new approaches. And we are now progressing to the world reopening, and curious on your perspective of how much of this new normal will stick as we go back to what was normal. And really, what does the future of insights look like for your organizations, and kind of what will your stakeholders be demanding moving forward? Alison, do you want to kick this one off?
Sure. Yeah. I definitely see a hybrid approach happening in the future. In person, I think will come back when it's safe to do so. But you can't discount the fact that our Adobe Summit was held last week, which is our big North American conference, and we had 200,000 people register for that, where normally we can only host 25,000 people when we're in person. So that's a massive increase of people that we can touch, and we can educate, and they can learn from Adobe, they can learn from their peers, etc. That I don't think will go away in the future. I'm positive we'll do some kind of hybrid approach. As for our customer advisory board, Lauren Johnson, who's on my team, actually headed up a cocktail making hour with our customer advisory board members last week because we couldn't be in person, right? But we still want those connections. Typically, we do that in person where we have an evening event at a nice restaurant or do something fun, where we can learn about each other in not a boardroom setting, right? Like what makes each other tick, what excites them. And so with this cocktail hour last week, she had the kits sent to all of the customers. We had about a dozen customers join. A master sommelier did it with us. We were all virtually, looking at each other like we are right now. And it was just a really fun event, right? It was a nice informal way to get our customers together. Unfortunately, we're still in front of a screen like we are all day long right now, but it was still a nice personal interaction that wasn't business. And so we're being really flexible and trying to think of other ways to get to know our customers in ways that aren't formal board meetings, if you will. So definitely see that happening more in the future.
Great, love that creativity. Nikia, I know Twitter has also done a lot of work around the Twitter Voices program and just generally, bringing customer empathy to your stakeholders. How do you see things changing, if at all, moving out of the last 12 months?
I think that what has happened is that, and this is, I'm going to compartmentalize or dimensionalize this response, but on one hand, I think what the pandemic has done that is perhaps a benefit is that it's democratized access to people. Working at a company like Twitter, where the customers are there along with the employees, we're all on the same platform. It's beautiful to be able to sort of like interface with people live. And so what we've tried to do in this pandemic and work from home scenario is to try and say, yes, that's great that you're interacting more with people who are tweeting, but we've tried to bring a little bit more of these people to the entire company through panel events where we're specifically diving into a particular topic, like what's going on with Gen Z and teens. How have they evolved in the pandemic? And it's everything from a live panel where we have 5 teenagers between the ages of 15 to 18 telling us why they don't use us and they love TikTok. And then followed by like some sort of anthropologist, talking with me about the future of teens and social media. And I think that's a beautiful thing because, to Alison's point, before we might have done this in one location, and now you send a link out and everybody's able to participate. So that's one of those things that I think we will keep for sure. And you don't have to worry about the cost of airfare and, hotel accommodations. You just bring everybody gets a chance to feel this. And so that's been wonderful. Yeah. And then of course we have things like the Twitter Voices program where we are maintaining this connection with people who are representative of a particular community. So, Black voices who are activists and leverage Twitter to sort of get the word out. And then we have these other spaces where it's less about maintaining that connection to the external community, but leveraging people who want to, have a say in the product and the improvement of the service in communities where we can sort of do more research. So there'll be more of those, I think, popping up. I think the balance for us will always be between the quick nature of being able to just react to a tweet, the wonderful, beautiful nature of having these communities and doing like the robust research that is perhaps a little longer, requires quantitative measurement, deep ethnography to really understand the why behind that angry tweet, or what next when we get a little bit of feedback from a panel. So I think that is something that we need to bring back, because what this digital era and the pandemic has done is sort of moved us towards this, well, we can do everything in public, we can launch everything really quickly, and we let people tell us what's going on. And that's a beautiful thing that we want to maintain. But I think as professionals in this insights industry, it'll always be this dance of, yes, quick, this is great, everybody feel this, you're all researchers, not really, and let's do it right. And I think the final thing I'd say is that because oftentimes teams scale around us at a pace that we can't keep up with, we've had to find ways to create guidelines almost, so that we are equipping people who are facing clients in sales and the customers org with discussion guides, because we recognize we can't be everywhere. So if you're going to have a conversation with a client, if you're going to have a conversation with NBC or HBO or others, at least practice open questions, right? At least leverage some of the techniques that we use when we conduct moderated interviews. So it's been interesting to sort of let go of that control, not me personally, but my team. Just, yes, you want to be buttoned up and be inside of those conversations to really represent a nice objective view. But it's okay, right? We want to make sure everybody feels comfortable having that conversation. And so that's another thing that I wouldn't say it's come because of the last 12 months, but it's something that I think we need to do so that we continue to get hired using jobs to be done language as a team that will continue to be invested inside of the company.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I know that democratization and sort of how much control to give to stakeholders versus manage internally and how to do that well is a hot topic for everybody. So I appreciate your insight there. And then I guess finally, Eva, maybe we can close with you just on this topic. I know travel was something that was very near and dear to your approach for sort of bringing your executives into the hearts and minds of your viewers and users. So where do you see things going from here?
So yeah, I think kind of during this period, research has almost benefited in kind of highlighted the importance of research, because this was an uncharted territory, and the habits and needs have changed so dramatically and so fast that we needed to understand what impact they have on our business and what changes we need to create really quickly. So that has been actually great in terms of the value to what research can bring. And exactly what we've been just saying, and what Nikia was just saying about democratizing research, because before, if we did qual, we would focus on 3 cities in one country, and now we can do qual and it can cover many more areas. And because of the COVID, a lot of more countries where the internet was an issue, they have strengthened the internet because of the schools and work, everything kind of being focused on the internet. So we definitely saw a difference in terms of research being able to do much more at this period. But we also became more efficient. So like what you're saying about the travel, I had a piece of work where we covered 20 countries qual in 2 weeks, which normally would take about 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah. And I had sessions with Hong Kong first thing in the morning. Then I had London groups in the afternoon and Argentina in the evening. And in the meantime, I had dinner with my kids. So you can kind of create this ability to go so deep and so varied and so compact. I do think there is benefit of being in the country, really understanding, talking to people, and there is kind of more of a dynamic going face to face, but we really can't ignore the efficiency that we have been forced to create in this period. And that's without sacrificing the richness of the output, because I think it really made us more sharp. We really tried to understand, okay, how can we do this and be a little bit more creative and not just rely on the talking focus group style, but we really implemented things like ideation sessions, co-creation, ethnographic. There is much more that we can do than we thought maybe we can do, because it forced us to be a little bit more creative. But I'm hoping a little bit more of a balance and kind of having both ends. But I think we were forced to be really creative, efficient, and actually see this working in our favor.
Great. Yeah, it'll be exciting to see kind of what the next 12 months have in store. So appreciate all of your insights today. It's been so inspiring to hear your stories and kind of how you've been tackling some of the challenges we've all been facing over the past 12 months. I think we're at time, so I think we'll wrap up the session. But again, thank you all for your participation, and thank you to the audience for tuning in. I really enjoyed our session today. And I think you can jump into the next session, which will be at 11:45 Pacific. So now on a session on movement and mindfulness. Thank you all for your time today.